So good evening, everyone. Thank you for taking out your time. It's been quite a dreary, rainy day today if you happen to be in London, so I hope this can lift up your spirits a little bit. I just wanted to take a quick second to introduce myself, and then I will hand over to our illustrious guests to introduce themselves as well. We'll be going through a few questions, and of course, you guys will be able to ask your questions as well, so please just pop them in the chat. I think we will have a moderator, so we will do our best to answer as many questions as we possibly can. One question that I have for you, and one favor that I'm going to beg and plead of you to do for me whilst I'm introducing myself, is that if you could also just introduce yourself in the chat as well. So just say your name and what stage you're currently at. So for example, I would say my name is Steph and I'm a year and a half PQE, just so that we can kind of have an idea of who's in the chat, who we're talking to, who we need to kind of tailor the answers to, just so it can be helpful for everyone. So who am I? My name is Steph. I am a lawyer and I'm all about empowering young, aspiring, early career professionals, mid-level, senior level, whoever wants to listen to me talk, really. And I do this in a number of different ways. I host videos, I host panels, I make YouTube videos, I sell affirmation cards, I do a whole bunch of different things. But I really just love kind of giving advice and giving back to the community in any way I can. And I'm also a social entrepreneur. So I have a business called Dossio, which has helped over 1,000 students aged 14 to 18 gain the employability skills that they need to thrive. So that's a little bit about me, but this panel's not about me. It's about the panelists sharing their wisdom. So I am going to hand over to Joy first, if you don't mind, to just share a little bit about yourself, and then we'll go on from there.
Yep, sure. Hi, guys. I'm Joy. I work for the government legal department as a lawyer. I'm about 7 months PQE. And just trying to do my bit as well, kind of like you, Steph, just helping out those that are aspiring to be within the legal industry, and just young professionals in general. And that's just a bit of background.
Thank you so much, Joy. And next we've got Jordan, who I don't know if he'll say it in his introduction, but we actually went to law school together. So I'm interested to see what Jordan will say.
Yeah, me and Steph briefly, where she got moved out of our class, but we met in law school. Yeah, my name is Jordan. I am an associate at Lewis Silkin. I'm now 2 years PQE, and I'm in the digital commerce and creative team. So we specialize, it's also known as commercial IP, but we specialize in any areas of creative, in the creative industry, helping with commercial matters and drafting, advising, etc., those kind of sectors. I'm very passionate about improving and increasing diversity in the legal industry. I'm part of the race and ethnicity group in our firm, and yeah, I go to events like this to try and, to help, to ask questions, to learn myself, and yeah, to help the legal industry overall. So that's my intro.
Thank you so much, Jordan. And Charles, we'll move to you next.
Hi everyone, I'm Charles, and I am also 2 years PQE, and I'm just started a associate at A&O Sherman in the corporate team, and that's kind of the reason why it doesn't say on my slide is because it hadn't been agreed by the time I said yes to this. So it's day 4, so yeah, fresh, very fresh.
Congratulations on starting your new role, and hopefully it hasn't been too much of a baptism by fire, but maybe we'll get into that a bit later. And finally, Pearl.
Hello, I'm Pearl. I am currently an associate at Lewis Silkin, also as Jordan, and we work in the exact same team, so the digital commerce and creative team. I have worked at the firm for 5 years, having paralegaled and trained there. And I also am very keen on helping others, kickstart their careers in law, and also promoting diversity in law as well. So I work a lot with the R&E group, as Jordan mentioned, and also mentoring schemes and just helping those from low socioeconomic backgrounds. That's me.
Amazing.
Oh, and I am an NQ. Sorry, I forgot to mention. I am fresh.
No worries.
I am recently qualified, so yeah.
Thank you so much, Pearl. And I love the diversity of the panel. We can definitely get a lot of wisdom and knowledge from this panel, so that's amazing. Thank you so much. I will move on then to the very first question, and I will start with Jordan, if that's okay. So can you share a little bit about your journey from law school to securing your training contract? I think you may have got your training contract before law school, so happy for you to talk about it in that way. Just tell us a little bit about that.
Exactly. Yeah, I guess it's the more traditional and slightly more boring route to becoming a qualified solicitor. I studied law at the University of Nottingham for 3 years, and at the time, none of my immediate or close family were lawyers, so I heavily relied on organisations like SEO London, Rare Recruitment to really learn about legal practice and to upskill myself and prepare for trying to get a job in law. And obviously also got involved in like the Law Society at university and getting events at the university as well. So in second year, I started to apply for back schemes as people do, get caught up in the big Magic Circle, Silver Circle application round, and with not a lot of luck at all, and but somehow managed to secure a back scheme at a small, not small, but an American law firm with a small training intake. And that was great because it was a great work experience, but I was also a second year student while other people, you know, had career changes, done loads of work experience. So I was unfortunate I didn't get a training contract in that round. I came back to third year and actually wanted to focus and make sure I aligned my applications to places that are going to reflect my personal interests. So very much interested in games, movies, music, sports. And so I wanted to look at firms in the media and entertainment industry that I could really, you know, have my passion and my work be at one. So, you know, it feels less like work as much as it possibly can. And I applied to Lewis Silkin because they are really big in the creative industry. And in third year, I got a training contract application, doing the direct training contract route. And that was to start 2 years later. So I took a gap year, worked a bit, studied abroad for a little while in Spain, and then started my training contract at Lewis Silkin in 2020 as a pandemic trainee, which was as you can imagine, a fun experience, and I'm sure Charles and others will attest to that. So yeah, and I think we're just going up to the training contract point, aren't we? So yeah, that was my route to training contract.
Thank you. And that leads quite nicely onto my next question, but I will spare your voice and ask somebody else. So we are going to look at the transition from being trainee to a newly qualified solicitor. And I think for this one, it would be really good to maybe hear from you, Pearl, and then we'll get Charles to chime in as well. But just because, Pearl, you're an NQ, it'd be really good to hear your thoughts here.
So I am an NQ, however, I've been on qualification leave, so I actually start work on Monday. So, however, I can imagine the transition will be very seamless. But the good thing is, I think relying heavily on the team helps the transition from trainee to newly NQ, and also just not being afraid to ask questions. No question is a silly question. I always look at it that way. And especially, it depends on when you had a seat in that team as well. So I've qualified into a seat where it was a team which was my first seat in the training contract. So accepting that and knowing that, okay, you're going to be going back to basics and just taking everything in your stride, and it will take you a bit to pick things back up, but with time you will be able to get the flow of and the hang of things, and also just managing and accepting the new forms of responsibility that you have, and just taking every day as it comes and learning as you go along.
Thank you for that, Pearl, and thank you for doing this on your qualification leave. I know I was
No
definitely
worries.
traveling the world, so thank you for being here. Charles, do you maybe want to jump in as well? And I suppose maybe from the perspective of joining a new firm as well, because sometimes that can feel like being an NQ again.
Yeah, no, definitely. So for background, I did my training contract at Decker, American firm, 9 trainees, so high levels of responsibility anyway. But then as a corporate NQ, I think for me personally, the biggest difference was like you've got your own work, but then you've also got trainees, you know, asking you questions. And you're like, I was only a trainee like a couple of days ago, but now apparently I know what to do. And then, you know, clients or other people emailing you because it says associate on your signature. So I think, yeah, that's a quite a big transition. And then even here at, you know, Sherman coming in at 2 years, there's something I'm experiencing like literally right now. It's just telling people what to do, you know, like, it's like, okay, I've got to get to grips, but then I'm going to be like, okay, this is how we're going to do things, you know? So it's, that is, for me, it's the responsibility and just having to like run with things and trust yourself that you can do it. And there's great support networks at both firms. But yeah, I would say that's how the transition has been at both DECA and Sherman.
Thank you, and thank you for sharing that. I think our next question maybe would be best for Joy. So in what ways would you say that your training contracts prepared you for working in-house? I know you said you're 7 months qualified now, so you've hopefully had enough time to kind of settle into your role. How would you say your training contract helped you prepare for that?
I would say probably in terms of managing my workload. So because I work in government in-house, a lot of the work involves kind of working across different departments within government. So my training contract really allowed me to kind of help organise myself, know how to manage my workload, which I think has allowed me to transition quite seamlessly into my in-house role. I would also say in terms of compliance, my previous role, just for a bit of background, I was working as a criminal lawyer in like magistrates court. So I was kind of interacting with a lot of different bodies, so like prosecutors, defence advocates, different defendants as well. Whereas in my new role now as an in-house lawyer for the government, I interact with different departments, as I said earlier. So it's kind of helped me in terms of client interaction and knowing how to interact with different departments, as I said. But I think those are the main 2 things I would say.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And I guess a good way to kind of move on from that is looking at what trainees should focus on in their final seat. So if we stay with you, Joy, and just think about that from an in-house perspective, and then maybe we'll come to Jordan to look at that from like a private practice perspective as well. Yeah, any thoughts?
So this was actually one of the questions that I wasn't able to answer because my training contract wasn't a traditional one, so I didn't have seats. So I'm not able to answer this question, unfortunately.
No worries, that is
I'm
fine.
happy to also chip in here, I don't mind.
Yeah, feel free, go ahead.
So I think this question, your last seat isn't necessarily going to be the department that you qualify into. So I think it's wise for people to think about sort of what matters they haven't been able to work on, or what clients they haven't had a chance to work with, or what tasks they haven't done or been exposed to during their training contract and that they'd like to have experience in, and then to see whether there's scope to work on those sorts of matters, just to be able to get as much final experience at trainee level before qualifying. I think that's really important. And in terms of the second part of the question, I think about ways that you can demonstrate a genuine interest in your preferred area of practice. So during your seat, but also after your seat as well. So as I said, where I've qualified into our commercial team was my first seat, and I had to demonstrate an interest in the seat for the whole of my training contract. So just sort of to keep your name in their minds, and yeah, I think that's the main thing. Jordan, maybe you've got anything else to add?
Yeah, sorry, I cut out. I don't know whether you came to me, but in terms of things I'd add from a last seat, I think seeking feedback early and as often as possible. I don't know whether Pearl you mentioned that because I cut out, but this is a massive thing for me. As many opportunities as you can to get associates, get partners to give you feedback. So while you're in that seat, you're doing what they want to see during it, and you are showing your best form of yourself. So you can better tailor your work to meet their expectations. This allows obviously for continuous improvement, and it helps you stand out when you make the decision, or when they're making a decision and offering NQ roles. So I would say getting feedback as often as possible and being eager for that feedback as well. Sometimes associates might even shy away because they don't know how someone's going to take it, but showing that you're somebody who's willing to learn and to really take that on is really important. But one thing as well I'd say is that don't forget that the last seat is also a two-way interview. Yes, you're being checked to see if you can make the bill, but do observe and see what the culture is, the work ethic, and the type of clients, the matters they handle. Like, do look at that and say, is this somewhere you can see yourself building your career? And could you be building with these people as well? And look at what associates are doing on a day-to-day basis, saying, oh, could I see myself enjoying that as well? Because yeah, that could make sure it aligns with your long-term career goals and make sure that fits really well. So yeah, those are the things I'd add.
Thank you, Pearl and Jordan. And maybe just to throw the question to Charles as well, but I would reframe it just ever so slightly. When you are at the point in your seat where you think, okay, this could be a potential qualification option for me. So let's say, for example, you're 2 or 3 months in and you kind of think, oh, I kind of like the work so far. The team seems pretty nice. They're training me pretty well, all that sorts of stuff. What kind of tips would you maybe share to someone in that position to help them, I guess, put themselves in the best position so that they can qualify into that practice area?
I think it's making it clear that you're interested, like being very direct and be like, you know, I enjoyed this seat, you know, I think I'd like to qualify here, you know, and then it's just asking the associates, okay, you know, what do I need to do, you know, to put myself in the best position to qualify here, you know, who you obviously you're trying to work with as many people as possible, but it's like, okay, what work are you doing? How should you be talking about that work? You know, if there are interviews, so there were interviews at my prior firm, you know, it's like, okay, how do I prepare for those interviews? Because yeah, it is effectively, you know, a 2-year interview, a two-way interview. But for me, if you've done, I did corporate in my 3rd seat and qualifications were in my 5th seat. So making sure that your prep and all of your deal knowledge or matter knowledge is just written down very clearly whilst it's fresh, you know, so that when the process comes, maybe in a later time or a later seat, you're not having to like try and remember, oh, what did I do? How did I do it? It's all there, clearly detailed, so that when the interviews come, you can be like, this is what I did. This is what I enjoyed. This is why I want to be here.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So moving on to our next question, which is looking at the typical day as an NQ at your firm/company. So Jordan, if I can trouble you to cast your mind back to 2 years ago, after you would have finished qualification leave, what was your typical day looking like? And if that has changed, how has that changed for you?
Yeah, so one good thing about our team is they try to front load the training. So we actually have an NQ training week where partners and knowledge lawyers in the team will just really give you all the information you should need to like get started really well and to refresh you after, you know, maybe you've come back after Quartey leave or you've come back a seat or 2 later. And that's a great starting foundation. And I really recommend at that point to ask as many questions as possible and, you know, come as prepared to that as possible. And yeah, once you begin as an NQ, one thing I'll say is, especially in the commercial practice, the variety of work is a lot. Every week, every day, there's something different sectors you're managing and different legal tasks you're getting involved in. So, for example, I was looking back at my notes. I was doing drafting agreements, negotiating them, advising on agreements. And then you might be advising on specialist areas of law. So there isn't one, you know, set a day that you would have as a new NQ, but there's so much to get involved in. And I think at our firm particularly, you're encouraged to not specialize as soon as possible. You're encouraged to get a general good foundation. And speaking from a commercial background, you're encouraged to get a contractual knowledge and understanding, get the principles right, so then you can apply that in your specific areas. And as you get more senior, then you can start concentrating on what you're particularly interested in. So especially for me, as somebody who likes to, I don't want to, you know, pigeonhole myself too early. It was a great opportunity to try loads of different things and to pick up loads of skills. And I'm still 2 years later, narrowing down and working out what things I enjoy the most and what areas I want to go into. But the good thing is that the fundamental skills are same. You know, it's IP, it's contractual principles, and it's how you use problem-solving skills to help your clients as well. So yeah, there isn't a typical day, but it's a lot of opportunity and you learn a lot very quickly and at the beginning, yeah.
Thank you for that. And I guess, Joy, if I'm to throw the question to you as well, I mean, first of all, is there a typical day for you? And then if so, what does that look like?
Yeah, similar to Jordan, I wouldn't say there's a typical day. The structure where I work, the work gets delegated by our senior lawyers. So the clients will directly contact the senior lawyers and then they will then delegate the work out to the junior lawyers. I've obviously transitioned from criminal law to commercial, so I'm only about 2 months in, so I think my experience might be slightly different in the sense that I might be doing things a lot slower. So they're giving me kind of like small tasks to do here and there. I work as a legal advisor for the Cabinet Office, so part of my task might include reviewing submissions for the ministers, or answering any queries that policy clients might have on any legislation that we've drafted or implemented. So that's sort of the kind of typical day. You might get one task that will take you about a week to do, or you might come in, have a small task to do, and then the same thing just throughout the week, and you might just be doing something different every single day. But as I said, there isn't a typical day. It just depends on client queries and how much time each one takes.
Thank you so much. And then Charles, what would you say your typical day is like in the 4 days that you've been at ANOS now?
So I'm already on 2 deals. It's different, but it's also, that's kind of how I wanted to start. Like you've got a bit of a foundation from my previous firm, and now it's just getting stuck in. And what that means is like I'm doing the work before I can figure out how to record my time, but it is what it is. But yeah, I think that's what it is. It's talking to people and doing the work, because a lot of this, this practice is, relationships, and the work comes from those relationships. So it's like, having the coffees to get the work and then doing the work. So that's, yeah, day 4, I'm still figuring things out, but yeah, that's how it's been.
Thank you. And just a reminder to all the participants that if you do have any questions, please do feel free to just comment them in the chat. We do have a moderator, so we will do our best to answer all of the questions that you might have as well. But moving on to our next question. So we've got, how did your expectations of being a qualified solicitor differ from the reality you encountered after qualification? So I guess starting with you, Jordan, again, because I think you've had enough time to think and reflect on your decision making. Maybe how would you say your expectations, or maybe what were your expectations first of all, and then how would you say that they've actually differed, if they have differed?
Yeah, I guess one of the first expectations was that workload would increase by an overwhelming amount, and it'd be difficult to manage. And of course, now we've got targets which are much higher than you had as a trainee, and that has happened, and I have seen that. But one of the things I didn't expect, as in reality, was the autonomy you get as an NQ compared to a trainee. As an NQ, you get more control of your diary and how you manage your work. Whereas when you're a trainee, you're constantly behind in tasks. You've been pulled onto meetings last minute, and be included on emails, CC'd emails without any warning or anything. So it's quite nice to have an idea of what my week is going to look like on the most sense, and to be able to manage client expectations, to put certain guards in place where I need to. So that was a big shock. And leaning on to another expectation, it was the type of work I thought I'd be doing. So one thing I didn't realize as a trainee is, because you're a cheaper resource, because also each team is looking to be competitive and get the best trainees come into their team, you'll find that the work you're doing as a trainee is also quite a lot. It's very exciting, very interesting. You're put on these deals, you're being put on calls that you wouldn't get as an associate. And I thought, okay, great, I'm going to be doing music, I'm going to be doing AI, I'm going to be doing all these sports stuff, all these movie stuff. And when I came to as an NQ, I was looking at cleaning, supply service agreements, things like that. Like there's the bread and butter of the team that has to be done. And it's great to get the skills and to pick those up, which from these kind of not as exciting piece of work. And with time, as you gain relationship with partners and certain members of the team who specialize in areas you're interested in, you do get the more high profile and sexy piece of work. But yeah, that's one thing I had to manage my expectations for, and realize that there are going to be seasons where I'm doing work and I'm not interested. It doesn't get me out of bed, but it's part of it. And there's times when you're doing loads of exciting stuff because you've got good at it. You've been seen as a go-to person for some type of work, and then all of a sudden it starts repeating, and then eventually you'll start building that niche and that Yeah, that's specialism. So yeah, that's something that I didn't expect.
Thank you. And Pearl, I'd just be curious to hear, I know obviously you haven't started yet, but I'd be curious to hear what are some of your expectations?
I honestly, sorry, this might sound crazy, but I have no expectations.
That is good.
I'm
That is the
just
best way
going,
to go in.
I'm just honestly going to try and take it all in my stride and take every day as it comes. I think not to like boast about our firm, Lewis Silkin, but it's such a supportive firm, and my colleagues are really supportive in the sense where I'm just going to take every day as it is and just see what tasks I get and try my best and put my best foot forward. I think that's the best approach for me.
I think that's the best approach that we can all take note of and all take forward. So thank you for that.
Right.
And Joy, what would you say? I think especially looking at that nuance of you transitioning from criminal law to commercial law over the past, I think you said 2 months it was. So were there any, I suppose, differing expectations that you had with those two different practice areas? And how would you say they have been met or have not been met?
So transitioning into commercial law, I did think that because I was really qualified as a lawyer, that they'd kind of expect me to just pick things up, although it was a different area of law. But similar to Pearl, my colleagues and my team have been very supportive and understanding of the fact that criminal law and commercial law are complete two different ends of the spectrum. So they've been very patient with me in that sense. So that took me by surprise. Yeah, I think that's probably the main thing, the support that I'm getting. I thought, at the end of the day, it's just the title changing. You're just dropping the name trainee and replacing it with qualified. Your brain isn't actually getting any bigger. So I think that's the understanding that I came to. And yeah, it's been quite comforting.
Lovely to hear that. Thank you. And then finally, Charles, I know you have to drop off in a couple of minutes, but to the extent you have anything to add, how did your expectations of being a qualified solicitor differ from the reality that you encountered?
I think, yeah, my expectations were like, that's the end of my life. You know what I mean? I'm just gonna be completely all in, but by myself. But yeah, there was definitely a very, supportive network. I was thrown in the deep end, but it's also a good way to grow. And the most important thing is that there was a solid support network around you and just not feeling scared to ask questions. I think as a trainee, you are like just so focused on getting the job, but then once you've got the job, you're still learning, and being able to ask those questions is just going to save so much time, and that doesn't really stop. I see associates, senior associates asking questions, and that's just what makes them better quicker.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I'm conscious that you have to drop off now, so thank you so much for your time this evening. If anyone wants to get in contact to ask you any follow-up questions or anything like that, how can they reach you?
Oh yeah, please contact me on LinkedIn, or if you're in the BGL WhatsApp group, obviously just drop me a line, and I'm happy to chat about anything. But no, thank you for your time and hosting.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Charles. Okay, so moving on to our next question. We've got, what attracted you to an in-house position instead of a traditional law firm role? So Joy, this is definitely your question. And what advice would you give to trainees considering an in-house career?
I think the main thing for me, I think there was less competition in getting a training contract in-house. And when I attended like networking events and spoke to other kind of students, I found a common pattern that everyone wanted to kind of work in private practice and a big city law firm. And in a way that kind of put me off wanting to go into private practice, because my goal was to just become qualified. I wasn't too bothered as to how I got there. So I think I was attracted by the lack of competition. Well, there is still competition, but not as much competition in getting an in-house training contract. So I sort of looked where I knew no one else was looking in that sense. Also, I'd say work-life balance. I haven't worked in private practice, so I can't speak on what it's like over there, but just from what I've heard, in comparison to my role, I'd say you get more of a work-life balance working in-house, where I start at 9 and I finish at 5 and I'm at home by 6. And I don't quite know if that's the same in a private practice role. in terms of advice that I'd give to trainees considering an in-house career, perhaps when you're looking for a training contract, look at things like perhaps your local council or like companies around you. I don't think a lot of people are aware as to how many companies have a legal department. So actually doing your research and looking at different companies, once again, that will kind of help you kind of get past the competitive nature of training contracts. But yeah, that's what I would say.
Thank you so much for that, Joy. And just to add to that, I mean, this isn't my story, it's actually my friend's story, but the training contract that she got at a private practice firm was through the part-time job that she used to have at Sainsbury's. And one day she just asked to go and intern in their legal department, and the private practice firm that she's now at happened to be like the private practice firm that works with Sainsbury's legal department. So that's how she ended up getting her TC.
Yeah.
So definitely do just reach out to companies. Pretty much every big company should have a legal department. I'd be concerned if they didn't. So definitely check that out. And if I'm allowed to, I know that Jordan and Pearl probably wouldn't have prepped for this, but if I'm allowed to flip the question, because obviously you guys decided to follow the traditional law firm private practice route. So what attracted you to that route instead of in-house, if you happen to think about that distinction? Maybe Jordan first or Pearl first, whoever has an answer.
I don't know. I don't think Jordan's unmuted yet, so I'll go first. In all honesty, when I was applying for training contracts, I did not even think or consider in-house roles or in-house training contracts. I think during the time when I was applying, so it took me about 7 years to actually get my training contract. Having gone to insight evenings and known about vacation schemes and training contracts, I think the process was really skewed towards private practice, and those career evenings, everything was just about training contracts with big law firms or, top 100 law firms. I don't think the market out there in terms of recruitment didn't really give much insight into in-house roles. And it's a shame because looking back, it would have been really cool to, I think, train in-house as well. So personally for me, I didn't even consider that option, truthfully, yeah.
I mean, to be fair with that, I was quite similar, but not because I didn't hear about those roles. I think in my mind, I just incorrectly assumed that, you train in private practice, you move in-house. So I didn't actually know that you could train in-house, if that makes sense. But yeah, similar to you. But Jordan, I'd be curious to hear your thoughts as well.
Yeah, no, I think, Steph, quite similar to you. It was a knowledge thing. I thought it was go to private practice and then go to in-house at a later point. I think now in hindsight, because I've actually been very fortunate. I did 2 secondments during my training contract and a secondment since qualifying. So I have seen a lot of in-house work, and there are so many benefits to it, such as that Joy mentioned. Also, the idea of, when I was talking about you're not in control of the type of work you do as an NQ in-house. If you've chosen a company that does things that you're interested in, that's what you're going to be doing. You're going to be doing different types of law for them, but you'll be under that same umbrella. I think the only thing in private practice might have is a structured training and teaching kind of process, because you've got specialists in their areas as partners and senior associates passing on that knowledge. It's just the infrastructure for that to learn a lot and to learn quickly is quite well. But I think what in-house has is you learn by baptism of fire quite quickly, don't you? Because you get responsibility so early on. When I was in my second seat on secondment at a car manufacturer, I was doing things that an NQ wouldn't be doing at my firm. So it's that opportunity to get involved firsthand, which looking back would be a great learning experience.
Thank you for sharing. So the next question we've got is, as a newly qualified solicitor, or to be honest, just generally as someone in the legal profession, because I think we all have to do this, how do you approach networking and building relationships early in your career? Any tips? So Pearl, how do you approach networking and building relationships? I get the vibe from you that you're very good with building relationships. You just seem very friendly and open.
Jordan's nodding his head.
She is.
To be honest, I personally really enjoy networking and building relationships. I really think it's essential from a junior stage of your career, and it shouldn't be left up to, the partners or the GCs or, the head people in our teams. I think the earlier that you start, the more comfortable you become speaking to various people with different roles in various industries and clients, and also your peers at different levels. I think it's good to also build relationships with your peers as well in-house and in other private practice firms, because during your career, people, or during our careers, people will move around. You know, one day people will become your clients, or they may just offer you peer-to-peer support. So it's good to just look at your circle, look at your network. Who do you know? Where do they work? And just start from, literally, it may just be having conversations or going for coffees or going to, you know, law firm networking events or sector events and taking it from there. But just naturally building up a relationship with people. And for those that also find it difficult, I know networking can be quite a daunting thing. I think just start small, go to smaller events, and then, you know, you can go to bigger events and take it from there.
I love that. Thank you. Very tangible and practical advice, which is really helpful. I suppose, Joy, from your perspective, what would you add in terms of how you have approached networking and building relationships? What tips or pearls of wisdom can you share just from your own personal experience?
So yeah, I'd probably sort of mirror what Pearl said in terms of attending networking events. That's probably my main way of networking, I'd say. I think initially it was quite daunting because I had no other friends in the legal industry, so I was going by myself, but in a way that kind of built up my confidence. And the next time I was going, I was kind of more confident to approach people. But if you're more of a kind of quiet, introverted person, I think LinkedIn is a good way to just reach out to people and make conversations that way. I know not everyone is as responsive as you'd probably like them to be, but just continuing to reach out to people on LinkedIn, I'd say, is quite useful. And also just within your office itself, if you work in quite a big office with different kind of teams and departments, starting a conversation with someone that works in a different team to you within the legal industry, I think that can kind of be like a more natural, easy way to make connections.
Thank you. And actually, just to add to that with the events thing, I mean, I think it may sound weird. I'm quite an introverted person, but I've always found it easier to go to events alone because I'm actually forced to talk to people then. Whereas when I actually go with someone, because I'm so introverted, I would actually just stick with that person all night, and I'm not going to connect with anyone new because I don't have to. I've got the person I came with, that sort of thing. So I find that if you're someone who just kind of needs to get comfortable or get used to networking, sometimes it is actually better to just go alone, go for 30 minutes, but actually make 2-3 solid connections and then leave, and then you're fine.
Yeah,
So,
I agree.
yeah. And Jordan, finally, what would you say your kind of approaches to networking and building relationships, and what tips can you share?
Yeah, no, I agree with what both Pearl and Joy said. Starting early and building those good habits, leveraging internal networking is so important because you don't know who people internally can introduce you to. One of the things I learned more recently, and it might sound a bit intense, but it's this idea of having an action plan as well. So obviously you'll have your, let's say you have a plan for in a year, these are the events I'm going to go to, but once you've left an event, it's then being systematic with what you're doing as well. So you spoke to this person, this is a potential action point, I'm going to add him on LinkedIn, I'm going to introduce him to this person, etc. And when a partner told me about this first time, I was like, I'm just at one PQE, but this is quite intense, it's quite a lot. But he is a very good at BD. He's very successful with it, and having that systematic type of approach means that you're not just leaving it to chance. You're turning it into actual tangible success, and it means that less gaps are being missed. It means that you're following up. It's showing people that you spoke to, that you were interested in them. You were able to catch up with them afterwards, and you solidify that connection you made. So that's one thing I'd say. And in aid of this, if you're in private practice as well, you might have the BD team that has their own ways of doing this and ways of tracking things, whatever system it may be, CRM system, blah, blah, blah. Getting skilled up on that quickly and knowing how to use that and leverage it will help with this type of systematic approach. So, and one thing I would say is you're doing this early to, get in good habits, but don't feel pressure if things don't turn up straight away. It comes with times you're investing for 5-7 years in the future, where someone who is a trainee in-house becomes a GC in 7 years time, whatever. that's what you're working towards. So don't put pressure on yourself too much. Just, put the right practices in place.
Completely agree with that. Thank you. And just on the action plan, one of the senior associates here at White & Case always shares her 1, 2, 3 principles. So I will share that with you. And that is for her, after an event, she connects with one person. 1 week after the event, she'll follow up with them and, just say something like, it was lovely meeting you at X event. Thanks for sharing whatever it was that they shared. 2 weeks later, she will then follow up again and try and arrange some kind of either a virtual coffee or an in-person coffee, depends on where the person is located. And then 3 months later, they then try and meet up again. And once that's done, they've kind of done the foundational principles of solidifying that initial step of the relationship. After that, you can, like their post on LinkedIn once every 6 months, or you can talk to them twice a year. It's fine. At least they remember you as a person because they've at least seen you on those previous 3 occasions, if that makes sense. So I found that very helpful when she shared that with me. So I hope that you guys can find that helpful as well. Moving on to our next question. And once again, just a reminder that if you do have any questions for any of our panelists, please do feel free to just pop them in the chat and we will get to them. But how do you handle high pressure situations while upholding your professional integrity? I go on many a prayer walk, but I'd love to hear what you guys say, and protecting your mental well-being. So Joy, how do you handle high pressure generally, but then also looking at the second parts of the question as well?
So I've definitely learned to be a lot more vocal about what I can and can't handle at work. So I think, first of all, in terms of like deadlines, if things are kind of piling up, being transparent with your clients as to whether you think you can meet certain deadlines or not, or whether you feel as though you need an extension, learning to prioritize your work and knowing which deadlines you can extend, I think has helped me kind of reduce any pressures that I may have. Also, knowing to say no if you don't have the capacity to take on any work. I don't know if everyone has the benefit of being able to say no, but in my role, if work gets delegated by a senior lawyer, if I know I can't take it because I really have a lot more else to do, I have no problem saying that I can't take it on for the time being, but come back to me in so and so days and I'll check if I can take that on. And I think just being in control of your work has really helped. But then I think that has a kind of a knock-on effect on your mental well-being, because if I'm in control of my deadlines and my workload, my mental state is also at ease and more relaxed. So
yeah, I completely agree with that. And I would add to that, I think you can definitely always say no. Sometimes you may not use the actual word no, but you'll find that the response you give essentially means no. So if you know how to frame that properly, you can do that for the sake of your mental health, capacity, all that kind of stuff. Like, for example, if something is due at 4 p.m. today and I'm genuinely busy on so many other stuff, I will just say I can't get to this until midday tomorrow. That's me saying no. I'm telling you I can do it, but I'm also telling you no because I can't do it by the deadline. So that's also another way to say no sometimes when you need to kind of manage it in that way. But thank you for that insight. Jordan, how would you say you handle high pressure situations?
Yeah, I think Joy really covered the stuff that I normally go to, but the one I've learned more recently is just being open communication with whoever you're doing the work for, from an internal perspective, but also client perspective as well, just keeping people up to date on your position. And yeah, that just helps manage expectations, and it means that at least you've give people warning that they might need to spend some extra time on something, or might need to manage expectations elsewhere as well. Seeking support from colleagues as well. I don't know, in our team, it's quite a big associate pool. Find ones you trust and like are going to be able to help you give good advice. They've probably been in the same situation before and can tell you how they got out of it or how they dealt with it, or just tell you it's not that deep and it's going to be all right. So whatever it may be, that I definitely recommend that. And yeah, the big thing I guess for me is also I try to get good time management and priority, and just task management as well, which kind of avoids the issue in the first place, but it still happens. So they're not foolproof. But yeah, getting ahead of that and learning from the last time as quick as possible. That's the best way to move on from it, I guess.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. I mean, communication is definitely key, but also leaning into your community, your peers, your colleagues, that sort of thing. managing your time very well to try and avoid it as much as possible. I think those are all really, really good, tangible pieces of advice. Pearl, do you have anything to add before we move on to the next question?
No, I think Jordan and Joy have covered most of it. I would also say, in high-pressured situations, sometimes we can think we need to do it all. And I think, especially as a junior or an NQ, knowing what is within your remit and within your power and your means and what isn't. And sometimes some things in high-pressured situations should be pushed up the chain, so given to or passed on to the more senior members of the team. Especially, you don't want to do anything that's going to affect or hinder your professional integrity as well. So in those high pressured situations, just having a breather for a moment, assessing whether can I give this to like a partner or someone more senior to help me, because it's actually out of my remit and I shouldn't necessarily be doing this alone. So that's something I would add.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Oh, sorry,
yeah.
yes.
And just following on from Pearl, from a practical one as well, like, yeah, if you're ever in a situation where something's gone wrong, especially, you know, we're regulated by the SRA, don't try and deal with it yourself. Do try and find someone who can help you and advise you in that situation. Like, if you ever make a mistake, speak out about it and do find help for it in those scenarios, because you'll create a lot more damage by not doing that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I would say that, you know, the majority of good seniors, good partners, they do tend to step in when they see things like this happening. But if for whatever reason, you know, their emails are slammed, they just haven't seen something is going on, just flag it up to them, because they will do their job and deal with what they need to deal with on your behalf, if that makes sense. So absolutely, don't be taking on stressful and pressured situations that are just not in your remit and not in your job description. Cool. So we have received a few questions in the chat. So the first one I've got is to both Jordan and Pearl. So I'm just going to read it out, and then if I need to summarize it, I will. So I've noticed that niche media firms like Lewis Silkin, Lee and Thompson, Simpkins, etc., have relatively small intakes. For aspiring lawyers that are interested in media and entertainment, what would you advise we do to gain experience or stand out in our applications, especially if they don't offer vacation schemes? So is that all good? Would you like me to summarize? All clear? Okay. Whoever would like to take it, I'm happy to.
Happy for me to go first, Pearl. Yeah, it's a really good point. It's especially where there are no vacation schemes, etc. I guess it's slightly obvious, but maybe not. Using whatever work experience you have and showing what those transferable skills are. One of the things in my I only had one back scheme when I was applying to Lewis Silkin, but what I did leverage was the other bits I had as well. So I did young enterprise in sixth form, and one of the ways I spun that was I had to set my own business, had to try and make money. If nobody knows that is, by the way, is where sixth formers basically try and create their own business to make money, etc. And yeah, you're competing to do in that. And what I said is, if as somebody who has set up their own business, gone through the entire cycle of a business, etc., I gained a lot of commercial awareness because I know what the business risks are, I know what the business goals are, and that is going to be helpful when I'm advising clients, because I know what it looks like to you know, set up your own business and what you're thinking about and what advice you want from a lawyer. So that is something I did in sixth form, and I actually just brought it up with a partner at the open evening. They found that really interesting, and yeah, so using whatever you do have and just showing what skills you've got from that, I think law firms recognize how difficult it is to get legal work experience, and as long as you are able to show that you put yourself out there to get work experience and you've learned things that are helpful as to you as a lawyer, I think that's one way to stand out.
Perfect, thank you. And Pearl, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, I don't think I have anything else to add. I think that's one of the main ways, as Jordan said. I think what Jordan said on commercial awareness is really important. And essentially just stripping it back to the bare bones and thinking, what does being commercially aware mean? And understanding how a law firm operates, how a law firm, how our clients operate as well, and what is important for clients, what sort of things are they going to be looking at and assessing in the current market, in the current space in which they operate. And I think just having an understanding of that really would help you go the long way. And when you're being interviewed, you can really demonstrate that in your answers by just having an understanding. And I think the second thing is to demonstrate a genuine interest into the sector. So you mentioned about having a media interest. So really just understanding and just demonstrating why you're interested in media, because I think that's what's going to take you from being one of the hundreds of the applicants to being one of the last 10 or 20, you know, where they narrow you down. I think those are the main things I'd say.
Thank you. Really good tips from both of you. Thank you. And I suppose I would just, I don't know if Joy would have given this if this was targeted at her as well, but I would just kind of draw back on one of the things that Joy said a bit earlier on, but have a look in-house. There may be big media companies that have legal teams. If you can't get there in like the private practice way, just have a look that way as well, because then you're still doing your media interest, which I guess is what you actually want to prioritize. And then you're still obviously qualifying and all that kind of stuff. So just check that route as well, I would say. But another question that we've got is, to all the panelists, did you have an idea of what you wanted to qualify into before your TC, and after your TC, what has made sure that's the area for you or changed your mind? I hope that made sense. Basically, did you know what you wanted to do before you qualified? That is basically the question.
I don't mind going first. I mean, I had an idea, but I wasn't set like, okay, it has to be commercial law. I went in with an open mind and I said, it's either, you know, employment, commercial or corporate. And I'm just going to see what I really enjoy. So that's the way how I went about it. I think also your experience as a trainee really can either like make the decision or break the decision. And I thoroughly enjoyed my seat in our digital commerce and creative team. And I could see myself in the long term, you know, that being the department for me, and also future career prospects of staying in private practice or going in-house. It provided many different options. So that's why I decided on that.
Thank you. Anyone else have anything to add?
Honestly, I still don't know what I'm doing or what I want to specialize in. So I think I'm pretty open-minded, still learning, still trying to get experience in different areas of law. So yeah, I think it's just about getting experience as much as I can. I think hence why I applied for the civil service government, because I think I can probably move around and get a bit of a taste of everything, and then hopefully in a few years' time know what I want to specialise in. But I certainly didn't know at the time, and certainly still don't really know. I'm just kind of going with the flow.
Thank you, and that's perfectly okay too. And then Jordan, I know you had an interest in kind of media and stuff, but did you know for sure where you wanted to qualify?
No, I knew the sectors I wanted to work into. I guess the area of law is depending on what happened in the training contract, because yeah, IP litigation at our firm, they do in media entertainment, sport, they do that, tech, all that stuff as well. So it was really about what experience I had going into each seat and how that went. And yeah, as Pearl said, I was very open-minded, and I wanted to work out what I could see myself doing long term, what I could see myself enjoying, and again, what I could see in terms of prospects. Where I then decided to go in-house at some point. And yeah, I think that's the best way to be open-minded, to be honest.
Absolutely, completely agree that being open-minded is key. I did actually, so before I started my TC, I wanted to become a projects lawyer because I wanted to do Africa work, and I assumed the only way to do Africa work was by doing projects. And I very quickly found out that actually you can do projects, especially at White & Case, in any team. So now I'm a capital markets lawyer because I enjoy that work a lot more. So I would definitely say be open-minded. It's okay to go in with an idea. I don't think that's a bad thing, but just be open to the fact that as you are having different experiences, your mind can change. There may be something that's better suited to you for various different reasons, and that is perfectly okay. So I would definitely just say be open-minded on that as well, echoing Jordan, Pearl, and Joy's thoughts. But thank you. Joy, we've got a question for you. So why did you move from criminal to commercial? And did you find moving to a practice area you haven't done before challenging? People often say it's hard to move practice areas. So general thoughts around that.
So to be transparent, the main reason I'd probably say is the money. Criminal law doesn't pay as much, I would say, as other areas of law. And also, I didn't really have a traditional training contract in the sense that I didn't have the chance to move around different seats. I kind of just did criminal law throughout for 2 years. So after the 2 years, I had enough of criminal law and I just kind of wanted to try something different. So but yeah, I'd probably say money and just boredom. Yeah, I would say the main two things. In terms of whether I found it challenging, personally, I don't think so. Just because the one role I applied to is the one role I ended up getting. But I would say people would be surprised by how transferable your skills are, even if it is different areas of law. I think if you really focus on which skills that you have obtained in one area of law and how that can be transferred into another area of law, I think that can really benefit. And also kind of knowing where to apply to. For example, I wasn't going to apply to a role where they were very clear in the job description that they wanted someone with 2 years experience in commercial law, and I knew I didn't have it. I kind of made sure I was looking for places that were kind of open to training people that didn't have background in that area of law. So I think just being mindful and more tactical as to where you're applying to can help. But it's definitely, yeah, it might be hard, but it's definitely not impossible to pivot post-qualification.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. So the next question we've got is, what advice can you offer to those who have not qualified in their preferred area of practice or have realized their training firm isn't the right fit? So I don't know if this is a personal experience that anyone can relate to, but even just generally, if your friend was to come to you or a colleague or something like that, what kind of advice would you maybe give to them on this? Maybe Pearl?
I don't know. It's a difficult one because I can imagine it's quite nerve-wracking to being in this situation. I'd say if you haven't qualified into your preferred area, but you're in an area working, I would say continue to get that experience. But in the meantime, maybe look for other roles. But because I have been told that there is, I know people who have qualified into an area and within like 6 to 9 months, they've been able to get a role in their preferred area at another firm or at another company. So I would definitely say don't lose hope because there is still time as an NQ. I don't think like your decision is set. You've qualified into commercial, so you have to do commercial, or you've qualified into corporate, you have to do corporate. I think there is some wiggle room in terms of the time period. Yeah, that's what I would say.
Completely agree with that. And as my mum would always say, you are not a tree, you can move. You can always move. I don't think it really matters where you qualify into. If you're not happy, you can take the necessary steps and move. So that's definitely what I would say there. Jordan, I noticed you unmuted. Did you have anything to add?
Yeah, just echoing that final point. I think there was a situation where I knew that once I figured out in my third C or maybe going to my 4C that I wanted to do commercial law, if, for example, there wasn't a role available at LS, would I have then stayed at LS because I really like the people of the place and go to a different team? I think at that point I would have taken the jump and said, no, this is the area I want to practice in. Great people, but I can go get experience elsewhere, and maybe I'll come back at a different time. I think in terms of, yeah, if you know what you're going to enjoy and what it's going to keep you motivated and you're going to be passionate about, definitely pursue it, even if it's not at the firm you're at the moment. I don't think that quite answers the question, but that's the close experience I've come to it.
Thank you. And conscious of the time, but we do only have a couple of questions left, so hopefully we can whiz through them really quickly. But Jordan, if you were to give some advice to Pearl for when she starts on Monday, what advice can you give to her to ease her transition into the practice area that you are currently in?
Yeah, it's very, very handy. What did I say? Yeah, so the main thing that I learned in the first 6 months, the 12 months, really quickly was, yes, well, first remember you've had a 2-year training contract, but in the area you're qualifying into, on day one it's 6 months or 1 day, and that's not a lot of time. So there's no expectation for you to know everything. There's no expectation for you to be an expert in that area, and don't put that pressure on yourself. Ask questions as much as possible and as early as possible, because one of the things I felt when what piece of work was given to me, and I would be like, oh, okay, I'm reviewing this contract. This is what I want to ask the supervisor, etc. But let me try and limit it too much. This is a bit of a silly question, blah, blah, blah. Don't do that. Ask all the questions, get it out so you don't make those mistakes later on and you don't learn bad habits. You don't teach yourself bad things. Get it out at the beginning. No one's putting that pressure on you. Don't worry about the time recording for it, how long it's going to take. Just make sure you're comfortable with what's being sent out, and that you feel confident that it's right. And yeah, ask those questions, and there's no expectation that people expecting you to know everything now and be able to change when you've already been there for 6 months, realistically.
Thank you. I hope you find that helpful, Pearl, and I hope everyone else
I did.
found that helpful as well. Great. Okay. So I think that was it in terms of the questions we had on the slides. And we do have Q&A next, but I'm conscious of the time, and we have also answered quite a few questions in the chat. So I think what I would say is, to the extent that you have any very specific questions for panelists, LinkedIn's have been shared in the chat. So I'm going to, hopefully on their behalf, hopefully no one will hate me, say please do feel free to just reach out to people on LinkedIn, and the questions can be answered there. From my end, the only last slide I had was just letting you know where you can find out more about me. So like I said, I have a YouTube channel. I talk about this all the time. I talk about my transition between trainee to NQ. So if you feel like watching those videos and just hearing my voice, feel free to watch that. I'm also very transparent on my Instagram page. I basically just use it as my stream of consciousness. So if you catch me on a good day, you'll get a lot of insights there as well. And I think I'm going to be handing back to the BGLU team to just wrap up really quickly.
Thank you everyone for joining us. This session has been recorded, and so we will release the recording in a few weeks' time. We've shared, as Stephanie said, the connections on LinkedIn, but also if you want to join the BGLU community, please feel free to email us or connect with us on LinkedIn, WhatsApp, Instagram, wherever. But thank you so much for joining us, and we will end this session in 1 minute's time. So thank you everyone.